grant from my own self an amount beyond count, which cannot be fathomable. You cannot assimilate and understand the greatness of that reward. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in this hadith al-Qudsi. Nonetheless, continuing on, another virtue from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, لله سبحانه وتعالى في كل ليلة عتقاء. In every night of this particular month, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala frees people from the ultimate punishment of Jahannam. Respected brothers and sisters, and Muslims in particular, think about this. Would you not want to be amongst those people? Would you not want to be amongst those slaves that would be freed in one of these nights? Would you not be happy to meet your Almighty, and it would be said to you that on a particular night, in a particular year, in such and such Ramadan, at this hour, you were granted salvation from the ultimate punishment of Jahannam. What a beauty. Respected brothers, now, in light of our current circumstances, in light of the current crisis that we are going through, we are shackled down. Some people have become pessimistic. They have lost hope. They feel dejected, dispirited, and demoralized. They will not be able to enjoy the spirit of Ramadan as they usually do. That is a wrong perception, and I want you to change it now. I want you to change that attitude from this particular moment. A believer never loses hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A believer never walks out a loser. A believer always looks at the silver linings. There's a silver lining in every cloud. A believer is always optimistic. Shake off that pessimism that you are struggling with. Brush it off. Get rid of the shackles of losing hope. Don't feel dispirited and dejected. The spirit of Ramadan is not based on us having communal Ramadans, i.e. gathering for Taraweeh, not at all. It's not based on us having communal breaking of fasts, iftar at the masjid. That is not the spirit of Ramadan. If you thought that to be the spirit of Ramadan, then you were wrong-footed, respected brother and sister. You need to change that attitude from now on. What is the spirit of Ramadan? Let's understand the purpose, the priority, the spirit of Ramadan from the beautiful verses of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and think about this, contemplate and mull over this verse. Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu, all those who believe, kutiba alaykumus siyam, fasting has been written down for you. It has been made mandatory and obligatory upon you. Kama kutiba ala alladhina min qablikum, as it was mandated upon those people who came before you. Why? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala concludes the verse by mentioning the big why, by mentioning the purpose and objective. لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, so that you might be conscious, so that you would possibly earn the consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so that you might gain what we call taqwa. Now hold on for a second. What is taqwa? This is a theme that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks over in the Holy Quran more than 200 times. Taqwa, taqwa, taqwa. What is taqwa at the end of the day? It's not something that you get out of the mosques for sale. It's not something that it is sold in the markets. Not at all. You know what is the concept of taqwa? Let me explain to you in a few minutes, beautifully and easily placed. The taqwa actually means you to take precautions, preventative measures. This particular word is often translated as fearing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's not the most accurate and the apt translation. It's a translation in association. It's a translation in association. But actually taqwa is that step that you take after having a sense of fear. For instance, if someone says, I fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but he does not stop from doing those things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has rendered haram. He doesn't constrain himself, restrain himself. He doesn't act upon the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For sure, according to me and yourself as a viewer, you understand and you know that is not taqwa. But if you go a step ahead, you have the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you do as He commands, and you abide by what He says, and you stop from the things that He has rendered haram, He has made prohibited, that is taqwa. That is taqwa. Now this concept of taqwa, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explains it to us as a concept. But remember, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never leaves it as a philosophical concept to hover over our heads. Just like that. He gives us practical examples on how to imbibe within ourselves and practice taqwa. How to gain that taqwa. And one of the exercises that we could do, one of the exercises that we could perform is fasting. How so? If you fast, you abstain from food, you abstain from drink, you abstain from the strongest of your sexual urges, your weaker impulses. You keep away from all these desires. You refrain from them. And you do this consecutively for 1 month. For 1 month. And remember, hunger does not discriminate. Neither the rich, nor the poor, neither the downtrodden, or a person who is enriched with the fortunes of the Almighty. It does not discriminate. Everyone feels hungry. Everyone feels thirsty. But you are refraining just for the sake of earning the pleasure of the Almighty. Even if you close yourself, you yet fear to grab that 1 glass of cold water that is before you. When you open the fridge and you see a plethora of food quantities, you would not want to eat because you fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now if you could do this, you refrain yourself from food, drink, the strongest of your urges, sexual urges and impulses, and you do this for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala 29 to 30 days. What is the lesson behind this? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us, if you could do this for an entire month, 30 days, the month of Ramadan, what I require of you after Ramadan is something very, very short. And we will conclude in our second khutbah. May God have mercy on you all. Respected brothers and sisters, all praise due to the Almighty. Wrapping up some points, bullet points that I would give you on how you could implement this particular how you could go about the acts of worship in this particular Ramadan. First and foremost, respected brothers and Muslims in particular, just because the masjids have been closed, abiding by the protocols of the government, and we respect that, it's in the interest of public health, and as Muslims we need to abide to that. What are we going to do? We're going to pray Salatul Taraweeh at home. Ensure that you establish a structure of praying at a particular time with your family members every day. Develop that habit. Teach yourself self-disciplines. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is making you take charge of your righteous acts, of your duties, of your responsibilities. Worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This will bring about a spiritual love. This will strengthen our bond, our family bonds, the relationship with our wives and our spouses, and so on and so forth. Number 2, respected brothers, recite as much as Quran as you can. As much as Quran as you can. And not only recitation, but try and understand the message that is being conveyed through the verses of the Quran to you by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And last but not least, respected brothers and sisters and viewers at home, don't overeat. This is not the month of feasting. It's the month of fasting. It's the month of piety. Cut down on those unhealthy foods that you feed on. Cut down on all those things that are not necessary. And it comes at the cost of sound health. Health now is the most precious thing that you could have outside there, respected brothers. A valuable commodity. We cannot afford to lose it. We cannot afford to lose it. And if you feel depressed by staying at home, respected brothers and sisters, then what could you do? Stay active, physically active. Indulge in exercises that will help you dispel the levels of stress that you're going through. And another point, respected brothers and sisters, which is extremely important, what the scholars say is prioritize your deeds and your acts of worship. Know what your priority is. Our priority in the month of Ramadan is the recitation of the Holy Quran. Our priority is the recitation of the verses of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by understanding them. Our priority is Salatul Taraweeh and the Quran that is recited in Salatul Taraweeh. Yes, you could listen to Islamic lectures. You can do to whatever you want to do. But Islamic lectures should not come at the cost of your priorities, at the cost of your recitation of the Holy Quran. Bear that in mind, and I hope you will adapt to this message. And remember, the spirit of Ramadan will remain. It is as it is. For the next 30 days, nothing will change. And may God bless you all. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما. فصلوا وسلموا على من أمركم ربكم بالصلاة والسلام عليه فقال مخبرا وآمرا: إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم إنا نعوذ بك من البرص والجذام والجنون ونعوذ بك من سيء الأسقام. اللهم إنا نعوذ بك من زوال نعمتك وفجاءة نقمتك وتحول عافيتك وجميع سخطك. اللهم إنا نعوذ بك من جهد البلاء ودرك الشقاء وشماتة الأعداء وسوء القضاء. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.